17th November 2012. This is the story of a man who fought a life-and-death battle for over 400 days in the world's largest and most treacherous ocean, the Pacific Ocean. He set a world record and returned alive after 14 months. But what happened upon his return that led him to end up in jail? Find out the full story in this video.
Kind of unbelievable story. That's what the world is trying to figure out after a man.
Story of a man who says he's been lost at sea for over a year.
How many days were you out on that boat?
Tuve 438 días.
Just hearing the name Pacific Ocean can make people break out in a sweat. You see, 71% of the world's surface is covered by water, divided among 4 oceans: the Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, and Arctic. The Pacific is the largest of them all. It's so vast that it alone covers 148 million square kilometers, almost enough to cover part of the Earth's 165 million square kilometers. There are only a few islands in this ocean, most of which are tiny, and some islands have never even been visited by humans. If someone accidentally gets lost in the Pacific Ocean, finding them would be nearly impossible. The man who survived 14 months in the Pacific Ocean was named Jose Salvador Alvarenga. He had a small boat, just 7 feet long, where it was impossible to even lie down properly. Yet he survived over a year on this boat, battling the unforgiving sea and setting a world record that no one else has broken. Jose's misfortune led him into this terrible situation. It all began in 2012, when a 36-year-old experienced fisherman from a village in Mexico called Costa Azul set out to fish on November 17, 2012. Jose and a companion set out on their usual small 7-foot boat, which wasn't built for long-distance fishing due to its small size. The boat had only one engine and a single fridge, so they could only catch a limited amount of fish. They planned to return within 30 hours. As they cast their net into the sea 120 kilometers from the Mexican coast, they suddenly saw a dangerous storm heading their way. To save time, they left the net behind and sped off in their boat. They drove for 6 hours, reaching just 20 kilometers from the coast when suddenly, the boat's engine failed. They could see the coast and even their village, and the storm was far behind them. They had a radio through which they sent their location to their boss and waited for a reply. But their bad luck continued as the radio's battery died. They watched the coast on one side and the approaching storm on the other, which was so intense that it began pushing their boat further away. Soon the coast disappeared from sight and the strong waves began pulling them in the opposite direction. By the time their message reached their boss, it was too late. The boss sent out a search party to find them, but with each passing moment, Jose's boat drifted farther away. The storm made it impossible for them to see or understand where they were or which direction the coast was. Amazingly, within just 5 days, their boat had drifted 450 kilometers from the coast. The small boat made it even harder to find them. They had no flare gun or anything to start a fire to signal for help. They began to lose hope as they realized it would be difficult to survive. Their food had run out just 2 days earlier. They had no gear left to catch fish, as they had already abandoned their net. They were starving when suddenly a bird landed on their boat. They looked at each other and pounced on the bird but couldn't catch it. They knew another bird might come. Soon after, another bird landed. This time, they carefully planned their move and finally caught the bird. They survived by eating birds that landed on their boat. Drinking salt water from the ocean could kill them, so they started storing rainwater in plastic bottles, which kept them alive. But when it didn't rain, they quenched their thirst by drinking the blood of fish and turtles, but only when they could catch them. Days turned into months. The mental torture they endured was unimaginable. Eventually, Jose's companion couldn't take it anymore and committed suicide after 4 months. Now, Jose was alone on the boat, surrounded by nothing but water with no hope of survival. Yet he somehow managed to keep living. If we look at maps, It's estimated that he was in a part of the Pacific Ocean known as the most silent area in the world, as only cargo ships pass through there. More than 6 months had passed since they had left the Mexican coast, during which Jose lost his companion and became extremely frustrated. One day, Jose saw a cargo ship in the distance. It was the first ship he had seen in 6 months. Seeing it renewed his hope of survival. He tried his best to signal the cargo ship, but unfortunately, the ship was too far away to see him. As he watched, the ship slowly disappeared from sight, and he thought to himself that perhaps death was his fate. Imagine being trapped for 6 months in a place where you don't see another human being, and then finally spotting someone after a long time, only for them not to see you and pass by. How would you feel? After 11 months, he had traveled 8,000 kilometers on his small boat. His clothes were torn, and all he had left to protect himself from the sun was a pair of underwear. Finally, the moment came when luck smiled on Jose. After 439 days, on January 30th, 2014, he saw coconuts floating around him and birds flying nearby. Seeing this, he realized there must be an island nearby. Soon, he spotted an island in the distance. It took him almost half a day to reach the island. As the boat neared the island, he jumped off and swam to shore, finally stepping onto solid ground after months. This island was called Ibon Atoll, the smallest island in the world. It was nothing short of a miracle that the wind had somehow directed his boat toward the island. If he hadn't reached this island, or if the wind had shifted slightly, he would never have made it, and even if he had survived, he might have ended up 5,000 kilometers away on the Philippine Islands. But Jose was lucky to reach Ibon Atoll. It was a blessing for him, like escaping from the jaws of death to find a new life. After exploring the area a bit, he found a house. Soon a man came out of the house. For the first time in almost 14 months at sea, he was seeing another living person. Tears filled his eyes at the sight. When he reached the island, the locals couldn't recognize him due to his condition. The people there quickly gave him food and treated him. After a few days, when he felt better, he told them about the ordeal he had gone through. When the news of this incident spread on the internet, everyone was shocked that someone could survive such a harrowing experience. After learning his story, the local police arrived. Jose told his entire journey to the police, but no one believed him. How could someone survive 438 days on a small boat without any food? To prove his story, Jose called his boss, who used to send him out to fish. His boss confirmed that Jose had worked for him and had been lost at sea a year earlier. Because he had arrived in another country without a visa, after a few days of legal proceedings, he was sent back to Mexico. But the journey wasn't over yet. Jose's companion, who had died halfway, had family members who filed a case against Jose, accusing him of killing and eating his friend. After a few days of legal battles, Jose was released. A few days later, Jose published a book called 438 Days, in which he detailed his entire story. Inadvertently, by saving his life, he had set a world record that no one would dare to break. Jose's story inspires us to believe that no matter how difficult life gets, there is always a solution to every problem. Thanks for watching until the end. See you in the next video.